Hey guys, Sly here, and before we get into this video, I just want to let you guys know that this is actually a re-upload of a part of a series that I do on my Twitch channel called the Sly Army Tier Lists, where we pretty much rank a bunch of just random topics that I'm personally interested in. And so, because of that, these opinions are not set in stone for how I feel about in the current day. And so if you guys want a more updated version of that, feel free to either check out the DeviantArt link down below or tune in on my Twitch that will also be in the description, or check out my Discord where I occasionally post some more updated versions of how I feel about certain topics. And so do keep that in mind. And also make sure to check out the description of the video itself for the timestamps for the particular topic that is presented here. But in any event, I hope you guys do at least enjoy. I recommend you guys listen to this as either like a podcast form or as just something to play in the background. But in any event, hope you guys at least enjoy. Hey guys, Sly here for another tier list. I know, that's kind of weird. 2 in a row. Actually, 3 in a row, technically. Since, yeah, but I know I said I was going to stream yesterday, but it turns out that packing was a bit too iffy, so I had to, I wasn't able to stream yesterday. But of course, I made it here for tonight. And yes, we're going to be doing another tier list just kind of in between when I get actually officially back, because keep in mind, I will be going to TwitchCon. I'll be flying to Vegas, and I'll be attending TwitchCon over the weekend. So I'm really excited about that, but I need to make sure I get some stuff done tomorrow, because my flight leaves tomorrow afternoon, so that's gonna be fun. Thankfully, this isn't gonna take too long, despite the fact that this is another tier list. It's one I'm excited about, and it's gonna be a topic that I've talked about plenty of times before, but just to kind of update things a little bit, I wanted to get this done anyways. But yeah, so yeah, I'm really excited about going there, but do keep in mind that, I'm not going to be doing any more normal streams until potentially on Tuesday. So expect there to be, another typical stream again starting next week. I'm really excited about that. But just sort of, I just want to let you guys just kind of in the know, because I know I haven't been streaming the past couple of weeks. It's just, again, I wanted to take a bit of a break, so I hope you guys don't mind that. But regardless, though, there's actually kind of a reason why I'm doing this particular list. It's because it may or may not be tying into a video that hopefully I'll be able to upload by tomorrow. Hint, hint, wink, nudge, nudge over it on YouTube. And it involves talking about first-person shooters, because it's just the genre that you guys probably associate the channel with the most, at least in terms of video games. I've played through so many first-person shooters that, I can probably write a full-on essay talking about the entire genre at this point. And, well, lo and behold, we're going to be talking about first-person shooters again. So, it's just a genre that I, appreciate and I just love playing, because I guess it just makes me feel a bit more immersed. Even, regardless if it's, a game that is more about just the power fantasy action about it, where you just slay everything that's in front of you, which is going to be the type of games we're going to be talking about here, or even, tactical shooters, or, more of something in between, whether, something that's a bit more slower paced and is a bit more on the realistic side. It's just something that, I've always appreciated. And it just gets me a bit more immersed as a whole. So that's kind of why I gravitate towards these types of games, or at least a lot of the time. Obviously, there have been plenty of exceptions. As a matter of fact, I would even really say that it's particularly true that, I only just play first person. I mean, that should be obvious. But I would probably say that it's overall probably my favorite genre of games. Just because I like being able to just sort of... It's mostly just a stress relief thing, if I'm going to be honest. So, at least when it comes to single player games. Multiplayer PvP games, that's a whole other can of worms. But generally speaking, I like being able to play a game where I just I feel like that, I can just relieve whatever sort of stress I have. Which leads us to the topic of tonight's list. We're going to be talking about old school first-person shooters. So, what do I mean by that? So, when I mean old school, I mean basically games that play either like Doom or Quake. So, games that essentially where it's all about fast movement, a variety of different weapons, as well as a variety of different enemies, and you're pretty much, for most of these, running in, guns a-blazing, just as a one-man army, taking out near impossible odds. That's essentially what we're talking about here. And typically they either feature some sort of, occult stuff, experiments that gone wrong, or some sort of invasion, whether it be aliens or demonic. So those are generally the themes of these types of shooters. Not all four of those rules are set in stone for every single one of these games, but that's essentially like, if you have at least 3 of those, then you count as a retro shooter or a throwback shooter. Retro in this context basically referring to any game that was released in the 90s or 2000s in that style, and then we'll just call them throwback shooters for any game that came after that. So, because generally speaking, from the mid 90s to the early 2000s were when these games were most popular. So like roughly around, I'd say 1994 to about 2001. That's the general area of when these types of games were like at their peak. Not to say that they didn't have their fans after that. As a matter of fact, we're actually currently in a bit of a revival era for these types of games. Mostly in terms of like the indie and AA side of things. AAA, it's mostly just Doom nowadays. That's kind of like that, but for the most part, it's pretty much just the indie and AA studios that are just carrying it out for everyone. So that's good for them, especially since I encourage you guys to check out the indie scene when it comes to video games, especially when you talk about games from the past like 3-4 years. My god. So yeah, like, granted, like, a lot of these games we've actually have played before, and we've even talked about them on another list that we've done, the top 100 FPS list. And yes, I did remake this list from 2 years ago. Actually, once I'm done with the retro shooter list, I'm actually gonna go and edit this, if that's okay with everyone. So yeah, it's gonna be a hybrid stream where we're gonna be doing a new list while doing an old list at the same time. So mostly because I don't know when else I'm gonna be doing this, and I said I was gonna do this back in August. I just didn't have the time. So yeah, thankfully a lot of the same games are gonna be on this list. So don't worry about being like too long. As a matter of fact, this should actually be one of my shorter streams because I've already talked about plenty of these games before. So do keep that all in mind. Or I've even just straight up streamed these games and I'll just kind of reaffirm what I've said in those streams. So, but yeah, obviously, before we get into the list proper, I mean, I laid down the ground rules right there. Essentially, it's got to be a first-person shooter that follows one of 4 rules. It's got to have it's got to be a shooter that has faster movement compared to more contemporary games. So like no sprint limit essentially. It's got to be a game where there's no weapon limit. So you can pretty much carry every single weapon in the game. They've got to be games that have a variety of enemies. So, all that sort of stuff. Or it's got to be a game that follows a sort of general like theming to it, like specifically like some sort of like supernatural sort of thing going on. Granted, that's not the case for every single game on the list, actually, with those rules, but generally speaking, that's what applies. Now, there's another term for these types of shooters, but this is the only time I'm only going to call them this because I actually hate the name. Like, I think it actually makes me kind of cringe because I've mentioned before, I don't like the term. I don't like generations as a concept. I think it's like pseudoscience. But like, if this sounds familiar, you've probably heard the term boomer shooter before. Never make me say that ever again, because I actually hate the term. I prefer the term retro or throwback shooters, because, I mean, A, it's not going to be a term that will be dated in, like 2 years. But more importantly, that's a bit more of an accurate term to describe these types of games. Basically any sort of game that replicates the feel of a lot of games from the 90s. So that's what we'll be focusing on here. And of course, as you guys know, this is just my personal opinion. If you guys disagree with me, that is completely fine. Feel free to let me know if you disagree with me whenever this gets uploaded onto YouTube. And also let me know if there should be more that will be added, because I'm someone who likes to update every single one of the lists that they make. And so I'm more than willing to update this if there's any game that I'm missing. I'm pretty sure I got all the major ones, or at least all the ones that I'm aware of on this list. So don't worry if it's going to be something that, if there's something that's not on here that you are aware of. Just DM me on Discord, which the link is down below. Or you can just send me a DM on Twitch or something like that. So, but yeah, that should be pretty much everything. And also keep in mind, I have not played every single one of these games, which is why there is a haven't played tier here. Mostly because, there's just so many other games that like I want to play. So at the end of the day, like it's just, yeah. So, but regardless though, let's get into the list and let's actually get into the games that we've either played or we've talked about, or series that we've like talked about. So let's start all the way back in 1992 with the original Wolfenstein, well, Wolfenstein 3D, and we'll throw in the other games over here. I'm not counting any of the Machine games, nor the 2009 game. I questioned whether or not I wanted to add the Machine Games ones, but like I just think that they didn't have enough of those elements, so I didn't count them. So we're pretty much just counting, Wolfenstein 3D, Spear of Destiny, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and then Enemy Territory, which was the standalone multiplayer. So Wolfenstein 3D, obviously it is the grandfather of every single first-person shooter. Without it, like, who knows what first-person shooters would be, or if they would even be a thing. They'd probably be a thing, because technically they've been around since the 70s. But this was just the first successful sort of, game in that genre. And I remember streaming this back in 2021, and I will say this, it is good, but make sure you use a source port for the game, specifically the EC Wolf. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. And I remember I put this in the B tier in our original FPS tier list. I'm going to put this probably in the same tier. I personally actually really enjoy this, especially when I'm playing with the source port. But at the same time, I recognize that it's definitely not for everyone. You are talking to someone who does tolerate and actually really does love these types of games. So like, I have a little bit of a bias. If I could, I would put it in A tier, but I recognize that there's better options for other people. So I'm going to keep it in the B tier. What I'm not going to have anywhere near the B tier is Wolfenstein Sphere of Destiny. Oh, and by the way, DLC or expansions and DLC, I forgot to mention this, they are also going to affect the score. So the expansion Nocturne episodes for Wolfenstein 3D, they're all right, but that doesn't really affect anything. This thing though, Sphere of Destiny, this was originally supposed to be an expansion, but it became its own, like, it became a standalone game, and it's not very good. Take it away, Fantano.
It's not good.
I mean, it's not the worst thing I've ever played, except for that last expansion pack. Oh my god. But it's not anything that's worth your time. And also, look at that art cover. That is like the most late 80s, early 90s looking thing I've ever seen. Like, what the actual hell? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm putting this in D tier. I'm mostly putting it on that low specifically because the expansions for this, which I think they're like the ultimate challenge packs or whatever, they are straight up terrible. Like, if I was not playing this with the EC Wolf source port, I would not finish this. I streamed this too, by the way. I streamed this back in 2021 as well. Most of these I've actually streamed back in 2021. And yeah, this is really bad, even for the time. Just, if you want to play Wolfenstein, stick with Wolfenstein 3D. Or if you want to get through the annoying sections with the weird bats, yeah, there's bats with machine guns on their claws. It's weird. Or feet or whatever. Then, like, I would not blame you if you just went and just played with God mode at that point, because, like, there's some parts that actually are bullshit in this, and it's not even funny. It's actually ugh. But I'm not gonna put it in F tier simply because this was still pretty early in the genre, so like, there's at least a little bit of forgiveness I can give, but I would not blame people for those who wanted to skip this. So, all right, let's fast forward 9 years into 2001 with Return to Castle Wolfenstein. This game's pretty good. It has its problems. It can be a bit annoying, especially in the third act. Dealing with like those paratrooper guys that can like snipe you off from a distance. And also near the end of the game, I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys because I want you guys to play it. There can be some annoying instances, especially dealing with a certain enemy type in a place called in like the Norway labs that I will not specify because that part's dumb. Other than that, it's actually a genuinely really good game. Like a really good reboot for this particular series. And if you play it with real Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the mod for this, it is even better. But we're going to judge it based off the base version, and Yeah, I'm gonna give it an A tier. Go out and play it. It's actually it's honestly one of the most underrated games out there. It's not like people don't talk about it as much, which is weird because this is really good, and also it's made by a bunch of people who would eventually work at Treyarch for the Black Ops games. So like, yeah, that's fun. Go ahead and check it out. And then last but not least, we've got Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, which was the standalone multiplayer that was released a couple of years after this. Return to Castle Wolfenstein already had a multiplayer. This was just sort of an expanded version of that. I mean, it's not bad, but like there was definitely a lot that was left to be desired. Like I actually do like the objective mode in this game. If you guys remember when I played a lot of COD World War II, and I mean a lot of COD World War II, basically that how that game had the war mode. That's essentially what this game has, is essentially like its own version of the war mode, and I think that was pretty awesome to play. Despite the fact that it can be kind of annoying when everyone's just running around at like a million miles an hour shooting out MP40s. Though again, that's why it's kind of why it's on this list. We're not excluding multiplayer games, as you can see. Single player and multiplayer, they're here. But yeah, I think it's not bad. But it is a bit lacking because there's only only 6 maps in the game, which is kind of pitiful. Like, yeah. I mean, to be fair, the modding scene and like the community was able to make so much good content, but the fact that it only launched with 6 maps in total, that's kind of a turnoff for me. Although to be fair, unlike something like Battlefield 1943, they actually released this for free, so anyone can play this if you wanted to. So I'll put this in C tier. If you want like a fun distraction, it's worth checking out. And if you want something that's like a bit more retro, but is kind of like in a World War II setting, then this is a good option for you. So I would recommend playing it. In that sense, at least. Alright, so we got Wolfenstein done. Now, of course, let's get the big kahuna out of the way. Doom and all of its sequels. So I think I'm just gonna preface this right now. There's actually not. This is a hot take. There's no bad game in the Doom series, if I'm gonna be honest. I do have my preferences of what games are gonna be at what tiers, but generally speaking, like, it's one of those series that I would genuinely say doesn't really have a bad game. So that's pretty good, if you ask me. So, but yeah, let's start off with the OG. I'm obviously going to put Doom Original in S tier. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's also a game that is pretty important. So, like, in terms of the FPS genre in and of itself, you gotta respect Doom. So, I mean, need I say more? Like, more people would probably give more justice on explaining why Doom is a timeless classic more than I can. So, go play Doom. And as a matter of fact, if there's anything to take from this stream or this video, go play the original 1993 classic. Like, it's gonna be 30 years old this year. Oh my god. But, like, it's still a game that is fun even to this day. Even though it's not long, thankfully, If you want more of something like that, there are a ton of mods. Again, that's not a factor, but the fact that this was one of the first games to promote the modding scene, which is not a point that a lot of people like to bring up. This was one of the first games that people modded the hell out of. Which allows for community-based content to, continue a game thriving for decades after. The fact that this was the game that sort of promoted that a lot is awesome. And I'm glad that, this was one of the first games to really blow up, community-created mods. So, but yeah, like even besides that though, it's still an amazing game just by itself. And thankfully, I know I've given a little bit of shade to this game, but after I replayed it a few years ago, I've actually changed my tone. Doom 2 is going to be an A tier. Though you have to play it with a source port, specifically the GZ Doom source port. Otherwise, it's still fun to play, but you're not going to have as much fun. So it's mostly because of some of the weird level design here. But I still consider Doom 2 to be a solid game that you can argue is probably... Some may argue that it's even as good as Doom 1. I just prefer the level design in Doom 1 just a bit more than Doom 2. Plus the fact that, like, for Doom 2, it's, like, back to back to back for each chapter. That is a little bit annoying. And don't even get me started on the Archviles. Archviles are... Ugh. But other than that, this is still a genuinely solid game that I would recommend to anyone, including the master levels for Doom 2. Though I remember I did say I gave that like a 5 out of 10. It's still cool content to have in the game regardless, even if it's kind of hard to set up if you want to play it on GZ Doom. It's a long story. But yeah, I would still recommend it. So, and then that gets us into Final Doom. So normally people would count this as an expansion to Doom 2. It's not. It was sold as a separate game, therefore I'm going to treat it as a separate game. Granted, this one has the issue of releasing just a few, I think, weeks before Quake did. So, like...
That was his mistake!
Yeah. So, poor timing on this one. Not to say that this is bad. It is hard as balls, though. I will say that, though. But I'm gonna give it a B tier. I think that it's still... I think it's definitely one of the weaker entries within the Doom's franchise. But it's not something to discount. Check it out if you want more classic Doom. So... it's interesting. Then we got Doom 64. So this one's kind of a weird one because I don't like the original version of Doom 64 because I think I made it clear that I don't like the N64. It's the one console that I just have no desire in collecting, and besides, I have ways to be able to play the other, like the, top classics from that console anyways. So like if there's if I wanted to play something like Ocarina of Time or something like that, I have ways to play it that doesn't require me to use that god-awful controller. That being said, if you try to play this on PC or play the Doom 64 Retribution mod, that's actually what made me appreciate this. So it's not perfect though. I'm still gonna put it in a B tier, but I mean, I'd rather play this than Final Doom, I guess. So, but in terms of this game in particular, I would recommend you play either the official port on PC, or if you're like me and want to be able to play it just like the other Doom games, go seek out the Doom 64 Retribution mod. It'll be worth your time. So, and that gets us into the black sheep, I feel like, of the Doom series. Doom 3. A game that I still don't really understand the hate for this game. I think it's a genuinely really good game. It doesn't feel like a Doom game. I think that's why people don't like it, because it's the least removed game from Doom in the entire series. And admittedly, it's a bit too long. But that's not to say that it's a bad game. Like, I think it's really good. It has a really cool atmosphere. The weapons are pretty punchy. And I just like the general vibe that this game gives. And the new enemies that they brought in this game, oh my god, they are insane. So, I'm gonna give this an A tier. Granted, this one barely counts on the list, though. I mean, does Doom 3 really count, though? I mean, you have the unlimited weapon count, you have the variety of enemies, and it's dealing with the occult stuff. But the thing is that it's not a very fast-paced game, or at least compared to other games within the series. I mean, you can play certain parts of this like the traditional Doom games and like, the Bethesda era Doom games. But I threw it in here because it's a Doom game. Like, if people don't count Wolfenstein, you gotta at least count Doom. So, but I don't know. My gut feeling is that it counts, but barely. But I'm still going to put it in A tier. It's a solid game. I think over time, though, I've started to prefer Doom 2 over Doom 3. But that's not to say that this game is bad at all. If you want a more horror experience with your Doom games, or if you want to play something that was a bit more experimental for a game that came out in the mid-2000s, I would give Doom 3 a recommendation. It's not perfect. It has its issues. But it gets a bit too much flack, I feel like. People dog on this game a lot, and I don't think it's entirely fair. So, give it a shot, at least. If you don't like it, then that's fine. But I think that it's pretty fun. So, it's just, admittedly, it's a bit too long. And if that might be the case for you, then that's fine. Thankfully, though, even if you are iffy with Doom 3, you can't deny that Doom 2016 was fucking awesome. And of course, I'm going to put this in S tier. It's another example of doing a reboot right. I know, it's a reboot. It's not a remake. It's not a remaster. It's a reboot for the series. And yeah, it's pretty good. I would highly recommend you guys play it. Now, this game, I would argue, is as good as the original Doom. Doom 1 and Doom 2, people are contentious on which one's better. I think that one's a bit more kind of noticeable that the original Doom is better. But when you compare Doom 2016 to Doom 1993, it's actually a bit more close. The single player campaign is a blast to go through. The snap map mode is so much fun. I love the snap map mode so much. It's not a good replacement for mods. I understand that. Matter of fact, like, I kind of wish that there was better mod tools for Doom 2016. That's the one issue that it does have. But I still thought that was fun. And if I'm gonna be honest, people give the multiplayer way too much slack. This is a fun ass multiplayer. I remember I streamed this like back in 2019, the multiplayer for this game, and I had a fucking blast. And I even replayed it a little bit earlier this year. And yeah, I still had a lot of fun. I don't know why this game's multiplayer gets so much shit. It's not a bad multiplayer. Like, yes, does it have classes? Yes. Does that ruin the game? No. So, go play Doom 2016. Like, again, if there's anything to take away from this video, play at least either the original Doom or the reboot. If you are more into the classic style of games, go play Doom 1993. But if you want something a bit newer, go play the 2016 game. You will not regret it. So, go out and play them. And of course, that leads us to Doom Eternal, which admittedly, my opinion is still kind of iffy as a whole with this game. Not because I think the game is bad. No. It's still really good. I just haven't played it in a little bit. Let alone I've never even finished the game. I only got up to the first heaven section in the game. So like, yeah, not very far at all. But I still had a really fun time. This game is hard as hell though. No pun intended that time. Like, it's still a really hard, or at least it's harder compared to the other Doom games, I feel like. And there's a lot more platforming and, like, you know, platformer-like elements in this game. And I think I've mentioned this before in the past, but for those who don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of first-person platforming in any sort of video game. It's just a bit disorienting, and it's pretty hard to try to like fit. And it's hard to like see where you're gonna land compared to it being in a third-person perspective. I feel like, not to say that there are, you know, not to say that like every instance of that I think is bad. Doom 2016 had those moments too, but I felt like they were a bit more fair compared to a bunch of other games that we may even talk about in this list. So do keep that in the back of your minds. That being said though, I don't think this game is, like, from what I've played, again, I haven't finished it, I do like it, I just need to play it a little bit more. I'm going to give it an A tier for now. But if I do eventually, you know, actually own the game, because keep in mind I played it at a friend's house whenever I played this. I don't own the game yet. Hopefully soon, though. Then, like, maybe my opinion will put it into an S tier. Because I see the appeal. It's just I need to actually play it just a little bit more. So that's my 2 cents, at least about Doom Eternal. So, alright, let's get some of these other games out of the way. So, yeah, let's cover a lot of the games that we have talked about before, or at least the series that we've talked about before we get into some of the bigger things. I think I need to make an addendum for my opinions on the marathon games. So, I remember back in 2021, we talked about Marathon 2 Durandal specifically on that list. I kind of don't remember what I said. I think I ranked it in judgment of the first game. And that was a bit of a mistake, because I think I remember saying back then that Marathon was a game that I played not necessarily too much of, but it was something that I played kind of in my early teenage years. Like, I kind of discovered it after I played through all the Halo games, because you guys know I love Halo. And, I learned about the Marathon games because, they were made by Bungie. And I'm just going to say this right now. Is Marathon the worst game I've ever played? No. But it's a game that I think people think too highly of, and that included me whenever I first initially played it. It's pretty average for a Doom clone, especially considering that I played a lot of other shooter games from that era at this point, that I don't think I can properly recommend this. I'm going to put it in a C tier. Like, this game, unfortunately, has not aged well, or at least not as well as I wished. You guys probably remember I streamed this not only earlier this year, but also December of 2021. And yeah, I did not vibe with this game anymore. And that makes me sad, because I had some fun whenever I initially played it, a long time ago. But yeah, no, this is aged not very good. Like, again, that's kind of admittedly why I'm excited for the reboot game, or like the reboot game that's coming out, because I like the universe. I like what is set up within the games here. And I even read like some of the background story for this game, because this is one of the first games to kind of have a story tied to its tied to its gameplay. But yeah, the game itself has not aged well at all. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm hoping Bungie fans don't get fucking mad at me on that one. But yeah, I'm sorry. It's a bit too floaty. I know you're in space, but like, so was Doom Guy in some of the other Doom, like in some of the older Doom games, and he didn't feel nearly as floaty. Also, again, this game has some platforming elements, and they are terrible. Like, oh my god, it's actually a pain. It actually infuriated me for a good long while. So yeah, if someone ever makes a mod for Doom that uses Marathon as the basis for it, maybe I'll give it a better recommendation, because I want to like this game again, but I just can't. It is a game that was made in 1994, and unfortunately feels like a game that came out from 1994. Unlike something like Doom, where it actually does feel timeless. Granted, that's because of the source port that I played, GZ Doom. That's a really good source port. That game was made timeless. This does not. This feels extremely dated. Like, so yeah, like, I know this was Apple's response to Microsoft or DOS games or whatever, but yeah, it feels like the meme of like, oh, I want to play Doom. We have Doom at home. Doom at home. That's kind of what it feels like. So I'm sorry. Yeah, like I said, yeah, Bungie fanboys are not going to be happy about that one. And I'm going to have to talk about Marathon Durandal, which is kind of the same stuff, just with different graphics. I fully regret putting this in A tier. It is not an A tier game at all. Is it the worst game I've ever played? No. But again, it's similar in style. So, yeah, I would not really recommend this. Again, someone, please make a Doom port, like a Doom mod port of these games, they will play a million. Again, it mostly stems from how they play. That's what sucks about these games. Is just actually controlling and playing feels like ass. And when you're trying to maneuver around like the more platformy elements, it doesn't work. So yeah. And truth be told, I feel like Marathon Infinity, like I've not played this game, but I feel like it's probably going to be the same sort of like situation. I'm going to put it in haven't played just to be fair, but yeah, no, I doubt it's going to be much different. So yeah, I'm sorry about that one, guys. So yeah. All right, let's talk about Heretic. Yeah, let's go away from the sci-fi stuff for now. Like this sci-fi bullshit. Let's go fantasy. So, Heretic, aka Wizard Doom, which makes sense because it's literally on the same Jedi engine. I think I gave this game a little bit too much shit when I like ranked it. Because I remember I ranked this last year or on the games that I played tier list. I gave it a C tier. I think I might have been a bit too harsh on it. It was mostly because I was super confused about the expansions, like the expansion pack that with this game. The actual OG game was fine. It's just the expansion ruined it. I think it's like the Dark Citadel or something. Oh wait, no, or is that in Hexen? I don't remember. But yeah, I'm gonna put this in a B tier. It can be a little bit of fun, but it is a bit too derivative of Doom. I know that makes sense because it's on the same damn engine. But like it's a bit too on the nose when it comes to that. And admittedly, for a lot of people, granted not for me, because I love fantasy stuff, but the fantasy thing might be a bit iffy for people. So yeah. But yeah, let's get into Hexen 1 and Hexen 2. So these are actually technically sequels to Heretic. I've not played them on stream yet. Mostly because, well, if I'm going to be honest, Hexen 1, well, both these games are really difficult to get into. As in, like, they're very cryptic. So yeah, that got really annoying with these games. I like their aesthetic. I actually really, really like the theming that they're going for with both these games. Hexen 1 is still using the Doom engine. And it actually has a lot of backtracking with this. You actually go back between like several different hubs within the game, which is interesting. Hexen 2, the same thing, except they do it in the Quake engine. So I like them, but I don't love them, though. I'm going to put them in the same tiering regardless. So I'm going to put them both in C tier. Because, again, I just wish it was a bit more straightforward. Because that's admittedly, like, one of the things that is a defining thing on these types of games is they're easy to pick up and play. Or, like, not these games, but, like, just Doom clones or retro throwback shooters in general. They were designed to be more straightforward for people to be able to enjoy and play. These aren't. So, but yeah, I mean, I'd rather play them over the marathon games any day of the week. But yeah, I feel like they're just kind of a bit too hard to get into. Simply because, yeah, there's, well, the backtracking and, like, there's a lot of, like, tiny things. Like, yeah, it mostly boils down to the navigation kind of not being, like, the level. Yeah, I think it's level design. I think the level design just ruins it. So, Because everything else about both games are fine. It's just the level design. So, yeah, that's kind of why I'm putting them there. Not bad games, but definitely you can tell there's a lot left to be desired. So, but let's go back to sci-fi. Let's go Star Wars. So, I streamed Dark Forces, I think, earlier this year. I think. Or was it last year? I don't remember. And yeah, I had a fun time. I thought this game was pretty fun. I'm gonna put this in. Yeah, fuck it. I'm putting in A tier. I had a lot of fun playing this. I did actually play this originally on DOS before. Actually, most of these games I originally played on their original formats before, so pretty much DOS. And that's kind of what I was judging my ranking whenever I talked about this before. But after I played through the Dark Engine, I think it's called the Dark Engine source port or something like that. That was really fun. Like, again, controls was mostly a bunch of the issue is an issue with me. Like, if the game controls like ass, I don't like it. So thankfully that this source port fixed that, and it's really fun. Seek it out. So especially if you want something that, especially if you're a huge Star Wars fan and you are looking for, like, you know, a more grounded sort of game in this genre. So yeah, that's fun. Then we got Jedi Knight 2. Or Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. Jedi Knight 2, I was hesitant to add that one. I'm not hesitant to add this because this is essentially Star Wars Quake. Dark Forces is essentially Star Wars Doom. I know there's people who deny that, but like, it plays very similarly. And this is essentially Star Wars Quake with third-person lightsaber action. So I like this game. It has very, 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 very dated and cheesy cutscenes though, because they actually use live actors for the cutscenes, which is really funny. Again, the actual in-game visuals I'm fine with, even though like there's some weird ass creatures like that you can barely tell what the hell they are, but whatever. I think my big issue with this game is mostly that, like, the first half is really good. The second half is kind of a drag. So, especially when you start fighting all the bosses and all the Dark Jedi in the game. So, and I'm not gonna lie, but Jarek is kinda lame as a villain. I didn't really care for him as much. I mean, to be fair, he's better than half the sequel trilogy villains, but like, yeah, I wouldn't say that he's like anything that stands out in terms of Star Wars lore, especially as someone who is a huge fan of Star Wars. So, but I'm gonna give this game a B tier. So I think I just prefer Dark Forces a bit more. That's not to say that this is a bad game. Some people actually do prefer this game over Dark Forces. I just think I need to play a better version of this game, to be fair. It controls fine just as normal, but I know that there is another port of this that I might want to try myself. So, yeah. And then we get into Duke Nukem 3D. I kind of forgot to throw him in here. Yeah, I think I was a bit too harsh on him in our original tier list. I put this in C tier. I don't think he's that low. And truth be told, like, he's not as blazing I thought, or you can make it not as blatant if you want about, you know, his thing. But that being said, I still wouldn't put this in S tier, but I am gonna put this in A tier. Yeah, I've completely changed my mind on Duke Nukem 3D. It's a good game. That's all I gotta really say, though. Like, I still think I prefer Doom overall, and hell, there's like even just some other games from this time period that I do prefer, as you can see up there. But I respect the game for what it was doing back in 1996. Like, it was more than just a simple Doom clone, even though it was obviously heavily inspired by Doom. So, yeah, level design wise, enemy wise, weapon wise, this game was pretty good. So, but now let's get into, yeah, let's ramp it up a little bit. Let's talk about Quake and its sequels. So, yeah, the only game we don't have on here is Enemy Territory Quake Wars, but again, that's not really, like, that is more of a Battlefield style of game, so that's why it's not on here. Underrated, though. People ignore that game, I feel like. Although I guess while we're at it, we might as well also talk about Unreal. Don't worry, I'll get to the other games in between. So, but yeah, Quake. I've said plenty of times before that this has become another favorite game of mine. And I don't think I need to repeat myself. Play Quake. I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but like, if you haven't take anything away from this video, play Quake. But like, this, if I'm going to be honest, out of this entire list, this is probably my favorite game on the list. I don't know why. I just love the way that it plays, just the way that it feels. Just sort of the distorted mix between like horror, science fiction, and like dark fantasy here that's going on. It's such an interesting mix to me. And you know, like I can literally beat the first section of the game in like fucking like 10-15 minutes, which is, you know, insane. Usually I don't speed run, but like that's kind of the exception for me. But like I just love just sort of the way that this game plays, because it feels like it's very different from Doom in a lot of ways, but it feels like Doom Plus in a lot of ways as well. And that's why I really like this game. It's familiar territory, but at the same time, it's different enough to where it can stand on its own. Plus, this game brought us a bunch of other franchises that we wouldn't have otherwise, two of which we're going to talk about on this list. So, so if you want to pay your respects, like and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but like, if you have issues with Quake, but you like some of these other games we're going to be talking about, remember that Quake was not only the first, but it was the game that basically made every other first-person shooter that we know now what they are. So you gotta respect your elder games here. So, and again, I just love the game in general. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So, Quake S tier. Quake II. Yeah, I put it in A tier. It's funny because this was the game I played immediately after our original tier list. Yeah, I still recommend it. It has its problems. There's a lot of backtracking that does kind of slog through. And admittedly, I think it was called Ground Zeroes. The second expansion for this wasn't very good, if I'm gonna be honest. The Reckoning was fine. But yeah, Ground Zeroes was not very good at all. Oh, I forgot to mention the Quake expansions. Yeah, they're all good. Even the ones made by Machine Games. So, yeah, good. I think there was another one made last year for the 25th anniversary for this. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Let me know if you want me to play that. Especially since I like completing games. But yeah, no, Quake II. I think my other issue is that the enemies do feel a bit too bullet spongy at times. I don't know, it's just I feel like every single time I use either a shotgun or even like the super shotgun or the SMG, it just feels like it takes a while until I'm able to kill anyone, even just like lower level enemies. So like admittedly that's kind of an issue. It's not super consistent across the board in terms of that. But I still like the game. Yeah, the Quake II RTX mod does look beautiful. Even if it changes the skybox, but whatever. Quake 2 is fine. If you want a bit more of a slower paced Quake, not a bad option. And then we got Quake 3. There's a reason why I brought up Unreal and why we're going to be talking about that immediately after we're done with the Quake games. It's because, well, you were either a Quake 3 guy or an Unreal Tournament guy. There was no, like, that was the rivalry back in the early 2000s. When these games came out in, like, you know, late 1999, they pretty much were, you know, they pretty much changed the game in terms of online multiplayer. Granted, Quake 1 did as well. It's also why I'm putting an S tier, why I put that in S tier. And Quake 3, but yeah, with Quake 3 and with Unreal Tournament, there is no denying that these games were, like, you know, big in terms of pushing, you know, modern player versus player multiplayer games to how they are today. So, if you want to thank any franchise for, you know, online multiplayer, like, obviously these weren't the first games to introduce online multiplayer, of course, but they were definitely the first to really start blowing that concept up, especially since both of them are essentially just multiplayer only games. You can play with bots, but still. And yeah, Quake 3 is fun. I put an A tier. Actually, I think I do prefer playing it over Quake 2 because it went back to the Quake 1 style of movement. I just wish I had a campaign. So, but that's not to say that this is bad, like that's a bad thing, because it's still fun. And it brought us the Tech 3 engine, which brought us a bunch of other great games, including Return to Castle Wolfenstein. So you can thank that for this. So, yeah. Alright, Quake 4. So this is another game I technically have not played. I've only messed around with the multiplayer maps, but like in a solo thing. I have not actually played through this game quite yet. I do know about that infamous, like, you know, the one scene that everyone remembers about this game for, but I haven't actually played the game proper. So I'm gonna put it in haven't played. So, though, from what I can tell, it's a very similar situation with Doom 3, where it's like, does it count? I mean, it does. I mean, whenever I was messing with the multiplayer, it did have those same elements. It just wasn't fast. So I don't know if that makes it count or not. But it is what it is. But also, sorry if there's a bunch of noise in the background. But anyways, let's continue. Let's do... We're not counting Quake Live because that is just an update for Quake 3. So I'm not going to count that. But what I am counting is Quake Champions. And this is probably one of the biggest disappointments in gaming. This game is not terrible. It's just not really a great Quake game. The fact that they added in a lot of elements that a lot of people did not want in a Quake game, specifically the hero shooter elements, which you guys already know that I don't like most hero shooters. Team Fortress 2 is the exception. Well, I guess Team Fortress 1 is as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But like the fact that they added those elements in where there's like specialist abilities and like ultimates that will change how the game goes, and all the microtransactions with this game, and just the level design just being way too convoluted. Yeah, it's not, I didn't find it to be particularly fun at all. And unfortunately, there's some people who are like, oh, this game didn't succeed, therefore these types of games are dead. No, they're not dead. It's just, AAA studios just don't know, like, they, like, when they try doing a game like this, they add in the modern bullshit in it that, frankly, I don't particularly have fun with. Again, I stopped playing Overwatch, not just because fuck Blizzard, but also because I just don't like dealing with abilities that instantly guarantee someone to be able to, like, strike a kill. It's, like, it breaks the balance so easily. And it's not fun as a result. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put this at a D tier. It's just not a very fun Quake game. And truth be told, it's the first bad Quake game, if I'm just going to be honest. Again, I know people give Enemy Territory flack. I don't think that game's bad at all. Granted, I'm biased because I love Battlefield, and it reminds me a lot of Battlefield. But whenever I was even just playing that game with bots, yeah, no, like, it actually makes me sad that, like, they've removed that from stores. Like, I'd rather be playing that than this. So, yeah, that's a pretty bad, like, thing. And yeah, Bethesda, you fucked up on that one. You fucked up with Quake Champions so hard. And it makes me sad. So, speaking of things that are fucked up, let's talk about Unreal Tournament, or Unreal in general. So, truth be told, Unreal is another important, games franchise. This was the debut of the Unreal Engine. So, again, without this, literally without this, or without this or Quake 1, half the games that you'd know wouldn't exist. Like, this is a pretty important title. And truth be told, I played through the entirety of the game earlier this year, including the Return to Na Pali expansion. And yeah, S tier. Easily. This game is awesome. I don't know why people don't talk about this as much. Especially since, this is a big part of gaming history right here. Like, this is arguably one of the most influential games from this era. It genuinely blows my mind that this game just does not get the recognition that it deserves. That's why I always bring it up when I talk about the best first-person shooters. And games that are important in the genre. So, go try to find it somewhere. Unfortunately, fucking Epic removed all these games from all digital fronts. So, like, you're gonna have to pull up a hook if you want to play any of these games. Because, well, Epic would rather sell you, overpriced skins and, try to tell you that online, battle royales are better than, games that have actual passion put into them. But anyways, speaking of that, Unreal Tournament. the OG Unreal Tournament. I would honestly say that I do prefer this over Quake 3. I think this is an A tier. This game is really fun. And it has some of the most iconic things in gaming in it. I mean, Two Worlds is from this game. The meme where it's like, like all the different kill streaks, they come from this, where it's like monster kill, like stuff like that. It comes from this. And obviously, iconic stuff aside, this game is just really fun to control and play. And it has a ton of different like modes that they've added compared to even the original Unreal. And yeah, no, like this, if you want like another, like again, both of these I would consider to be the prime examples of how you do multiplayer FPS games correctly. Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament are so satisfying and fun to play. Go check them out if you haven't already. And again, unfortunately for Unreal Tournament, you're gonna have to pull up a hook. But yeah. But yeah, alright. Next up is Unreal Tournament 2003, which technically I actually don't know how to access this game. Like, they haven't sold this game in a long time. Mostly because a lot of stuff that was in this game would eventually be put into Unreal Tournament 2004. So there's really no purpose to go to this. And because of that, I've not played it, and it's going to be there. I've also have not played Unreal 2. So I can't comment on anything involving that. I've heard, though, not very good things. So, yeah. Let's just go over to 2004 with their Unreal Tournament, which, truth be told, I think is actually pretty good. A tier. I think I gave it a little bit too much flack whenever I first ranked it, because I put it in B tier in our top 100 FPS tier list. I have grown on this. And as a matter of fact, dare I say this? This is another example of one of the best multiplayers to ever exist. The amount of customization that is in this game, whether it be, character creation, the mutators for the game modes themselves, like, again, there's another sort of like war-like mode. I forget the name of it. Assault. Assault. I love playing Assault, especially the ones that you're flying into the mothership, into the Scourge mothership, as well as the one on the train. Oh, those are so awesome to play. And yeah, like there's tons of like, regular modes, vehicular modes. There's a horde mode in this game. Like, this game has a lot of value for your buck here. Well, did, but, Epic doesn't like actual good games. So, yeah, like, and of course, I know I haven't really mentioned this. Usually I do, but the soundtrack fucking slays. It kind of reminds me a lot of Ratchet and Clank music in this game specifically. And yeah, it's so good. Play it for yourselves. You will not regret it. And truth be told, that leads us to the last Unreal Tournament, official one anyways. Unreal Tournament 2007, or Unreal Tournament 3. Again, I think I gave this one a little bit too much flack. My big issues, though, is that it does feel... It is inferior to the previous games, unfortunately. It doesn't have as much content, and the DRM scheme that they pulled with this game is dumb. Like, yeah, those were, stupid. Thankfully, though, it's not an always online game. It's just the activation code thing is really dumb. Because every time I try downloading this on Steam, it pulls that up, and it's like, I just want to play the game, please. But thankfully, though, it's as fun as the other games in gameplay wise. It's just, I wish there was a little bit more to it. So I'm going to put this in B tier. So I'd recommend it, but only after you've played the other games. So if you play Unreal Tournament 04 and then play this afterwards, you'll know exactly what I mean. But yeah, no, it's A-okay. So yeah. Okay. But yeah, let's start going through a bunch of the other, like, the last sort of remnants of, like, the 90s games. So let's talk Alien. So this, I don't think I've actually talked about this, but I mean, I think I mentioned before that, like, I'm not a big fan of horror movies at all. Like, I hate horror movies, especially like a lot of slasher films. It just feels like it. It just feels like a lot of just either, gory scenes for just for the sake of being gory, or there's just a lot of exploitation in a lot of those films. I just don't really like a lot of horror movies. With that in mind, though, Alien, as fucked up as the one scene is, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. I find it to be a very fascinating film. And I think Aliens is awesome. I think both Alien and Aliens are really, 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 like, groundbreaking in terms of both horror and science fiction films go. And I remember I tried playing Alien Isolation several years ago. I just did not get to the part where we actually encountered the xenomorph, but it is what it is. And because I really respect the first two Alien movies, funny enough, I've not seen any of the other ones, mostly because I've heard all the other ones are either bad or eh. This got me interested in checking out some of the games. Alien Trilogy was one of those games. Though I specifically played it on my PS1. I tried doing it on PC, but it just didn't work. So, and I will say, maybe it's just because I don't like the way that PS1 first-person shooters control a lot of the time. But this was a bit too stiff for me. Not bad. And, I mean, let's be real here. Like, the way that they did it in this game was probably better than they probably could have done it for, like, any other scheme. But at the same time, I just kind of wish that there was a better aiming system, and you can easily get lost in this game. This is one of those games where it's one of those where the fuck do I go kind of games. It's kind of like Wolfenstein in that way. And because of that, yeah, I wasn't the particularly biggest fan of this. Thankfully, there are plenty of Alien Doom mods that are a thing, and those are fun. But the actual Alien Trilogy game, at least on PlayStation 1, I found to be a bit weak. Maybe if I'm ever able to get the PC version to work, then it'll be fun. But yeah, this was just kind of an average sort of game. I'm going to put it in C tier. Not bad, just middle of the road. So, though I'd rather play it than Marathon still, so yeah. And that then leads us to Alien vs. Predator. Again, Predator, at least the first one, was pretty good. I don't know if I call it a horror film though. It is a very violent film. And like there's some fucked up imagery in it, but like I compare it more to the Terminator movie, or at least the first Terminator, where it's like it's a science fiction film, but it's a violent one, not necessarily a horror film. So yeah, and yeah, that film is fun to watch, especially with Arnold being like the main lead. But yeah, I think I mentioned this before. This game also, I wasn't the biggest particular fan of. This is the one from 1999, by the way. Yeah, the year of our Lord. It's 1999. Not the 2010 one, just for people who might be confused. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to, again, maybe I feel bad because maybe it's because of the source port I need to play, which I know that's changing the actual game code. But again, I feel like this game was just a bit too stiff to play. And it does not help that the Horde mode is way too fucking hard in this. Granted, it was one of the first Horde modes, so I can be a little bit forgiving. But damn, that Horde mode is really hard. Even on the lowest difficulty. Oh my god. So yeah, I mean, I still stand by putting this in a C tier. It's okay, but there's better options. I honestly would rather play the 2010 game. As for Alien vs. Predator 2, again, I've still not have played this game. So, again, it's just kind of hard to find. It's one of those rare games, so, ugh. Then we got Blood. So, Blood, I played earlier this year. Granted, admittedly, it was hard to record and stream because of certain issues that kept popping up. Though that isn't necessarily something to do with the game itself. It's a good Doom clone. I remember I put it in A tier, but if I'm going to be honest, I think Duke Nukem is better. So I'm going to put this in B tier. Mostly just the level design is not bad. It's just a bit too convoluted at certain points. And the expansions were a bit too confusing to go through. So, granted, I am admittedly kind of burnt out on this game because, like, God, it actually took me like a good straight like 3 to 4 nights just to try to complete this, and like that was a pain, actual pain. But thankfully, the game itself is fun enough that I went through it all again. But it's not a game that I would say is like a must play. If you're interested in something that is akin to Duke Nukem 3D, I would check it out. But it's not something that's like required to play. Though, to be fair, Monolith Productions would eventually make Fear and Shadow of Mordor. Yes, this was their first game. And yeah, those were fun. Then they had to fuck it up with Blood 2. A game that is actually broken. Like, you literally cannot play the game without doing a whole heap of bullshit. And even then, sometimes it can run well, other times it runs like shit. And it doesn't help the fact that the story in this was really bad. Like, granted, I didn't finish this game, but even I can tell this game was really bad. So it took us a while, but we finally reached our first F tier. Do not play this game. this game is actually, like, there's a reason why there's hasn't been a Blood 3, and there probably never will be. It's because this game, it was so fucking bad. Like, again, it was stuttering on my Mega Machine that I have here. You know, the game, like, and I made sure to do, like, all the things, even on PC Gaming Wiki, which is the website that has saved my life when it came to all these games. This has been the only game that I have not been able to fix. Thus far, anyways. And if this is the one game, then yeah, that should tell you that they fucked up really bad on this one. Like, granted, you gotta be in the know, but those who do know this game is, like, people fucking... This is one of those games that's kind of a forbidden game. Do not play this game. Just go play Blood 1. Or any other game from 1998, for that matter. There's no excuse. There is no excuse for how botched this game is. It's actually shocking. So, yeah, no, bad. This game is really bad. So, alright. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about Shadow Warrior. Which, truth be told, I've not played Shadow Warriors 2 nor 3, so we're not going to be ranking those. I've not heard very good things about Shadow Warrior 3. I've heard good things about Shadow Warrior 2, but not 3. OG Shadow Warrior from 1997. I think I was a bit too kind on that one specifically. Granted, I know this was the late 90s, and, like, certain humor was a bit more acceptable, but, like, this... And I remember I said Duke Nukem has not aged well. In terms of, like, certain jokes and whatnot. But if I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of uncomfortable playing this one. Like... I don't know. It's a lot of, like, Asian stereotype jokes. And, I mean, I know that's what a lot of these games from the time were known for. Duke Nukem, known for being, you know, the badass who, you know, saved the world from, like, you know, aliens so he can save the chicks. Even, yeah, Caleb from Blood, you know, he was, you know, bound for revenge, and he did a bunch of, like, you know, horror one-liners from, like, a bunch of horror movies, specifically from, like, The Shining and, like, Evil Dead and stuff like that. And then we've got Lo Wang here. Yes, that's his name. Who does a lot of references to a lot of, like, kung fu movies from the 70s. Oh, and Duke Nukem with a lot of, like, action 80s movies. That would have worked if, like, it wasn't kind of cringy with this guy. Like, they made him a much better character in the reboot series, for sure. Don't get it twisted. Like, you know, he's an objectively better character in the newer games. But just a lot of those same isms are in this one, unfortunately. So, like, yeah, that already was a turnoff for me, and whenever I tried replaying this. But also, just, this game is fucking hard. Like, probably harder than, like, all the other games, like, on this list. Probably even harder than Doom Eternal. Because, like, even on, like, the lowest difficulty settings. Partially because you run out of ammo so fast. And the level design, again, similar to the Hexen games, is a bit more cryptic in comparison to other games. And so, yeah, it's not the worst game I've ever played, but I don't think I really have too much of a desire to go back to this, so I'm going to put this in C tier. Mostly just, like, because I like the theming of it. I just wish that, like, A, it had better level design, B, it had better weapons, and C, they toned down some of the cringy dialogue in this. I mean, it's not the. Trust me, I've seen way worse Asian like racial stereotypes. Trust me, we did the Disney movie tier list, and that actually made me physically cringe. It wasn't to that level. Trust me when I say that, but that does kind of ruin media for me. So just keep that in the back. Just keep that in mind. Thankfully, though, Shadow Warrior 2013 is the better game. I'll put it in B tier. You know, movement's fun. Weapons feel punchy, and yeah, like this was a fun experience. It does feel a bit derivative. Like, it's funny because this came out before Doom 2016, and how this even came out before Wolfenstein: The New Order. So this was like ahead of the curve in terms of the, in terms of, like, throwback shooters go. But, like, honestly, it still feels at home with a lot of the more modern ones. So, and it helps that this is one of the few types of these games where, like, the melee weapon actually is good. Thank every single god out there. So yeah, like, in terms of games that are like this, and in terms of the Shadow Warrior games, from what I've generally heard, this is the best Shadow Warrior game. So I would seek it out, and yeah, it's a fun time. And the Horde mode is fun in this too. So yeah, it's pretty great. Alright, that then leads us to Sin. So, whenever I originally did the first tier list, I have not played this. I have since played it, though. But again, in a similar situation to Doom 3 and Quake 4, it has the hallmarks of a Doom / Quake, sort of throwback shooter, or retro shooter in this case. But does it entirely count, though? Like, I don't know, it's a bit slower paced, and, like, but there is the weapon limit, and there's the whole, like, supernatural element. Like, I don't know if this counts or not. Regardless, though, if it does count, it's a decent game. It follows a lot of the same beats as something like Quake II. Which, I mean, makes sense because this does use the Quake II engine. Wait, this uses Quake II engine, so makes sense. So I just haven't played enough of it, though, if I'm gonna be honest. I'm more still just kind of skimmed through. I'm gonna put it in B tier because I do like John Blade. He's the main character. I do like his character, and I like the cyberpunk theme that they've got going on here. I think I just need to play it a little bit more. So, yeah. All right. Well, now we've reached Half-Life. Oh boy. Yes, this counts. Not only is this game running on a heavily modified version of the Quake engine, but also you can play this like a Doom, like you can play this like a Quake game. I've done it plenty of times, and yeah. So, if you guys are familiar with the channel, you guys know I have a history with this game. for nearly 6 straight years, I have tried to get myself into this game specifically. But every time I try playing this, and I'm not talking about the Half-Life Source version, I'm talking the one that they have on Steam, that is the original game on the Gold Source engine, which again is that heavily modified Quake engine. That's this game right here. Every fucking time I try playing this game, and I just don't click with it. Like, yes, I have a lot of hours on this game, but not only is that because I've tried playing this multiple times, but also mostly because I've actually been playing a lot more mods, because I think the engine is good. I mean, again, it's based off the Quake engine, so like Gold Source engine, and of course that would evolve into the Source engine, which I love the Source engine. It's one of the coolest pieces of gaming technology out there. But I just don't like it's the one game from this era that I just can't get into. I've streamed this multiple times as well. And I just can't click with this game. Like, and it mostly stems from the fact that I hate the second half of the game. The first half is fine. Like, I think I've grown enough to appreciate the first half of the game. But specifically, once, like, after the part where you get knocked out, that's where it just stops for me. And it doesn't help that even in that first half that is somewhat enjoyable for me, that there's so many cheap one-shot deaths that happen throughout the entire campaign. It gets annoying really fast. Also, I've always said this, the shooting sucks in this game. Like, the actual fundamental part of your game, like, movement is actually pretty good, I would say. And I would even say that some of the weapons are actually really cool. But if you're using any of the hit scan ballistic weapons, they just don't feel right. And this is not, and I've had motherfuckers say this, and it's like, oh, what do you expect? It's a game from 1998. I expect good shooting, which happened in many of the games that we've even talked about on this list. Quake, Unreal, Quake II. Even though there's some inconsistencies with that game, but you know, whatever. Jedi Dark Forces. Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, excuse me. Sin, even, which came out just a few weeks before Half-Life 1. I tried to get into this game. I just can't. I don't hate it as much as I used to anymore. So, like, don't think I'm just someone who's, you know, I used to hate this game. I don't anymore. But at the same time, I think this is still one of the most overrated games of all time. Especially when you compare it to games that came out back then. And then, on top of that, the amount of, like, fanboy praise that people just blindly give. Even though this game has some fundamental issues, specifically involving the shooting, and don't even get me started with the Zen chapters. So, I'm sorry, but, like, I tried. I genuinely did try. But, like, truth be told, I was originally going to hide this fact later, but next month, on the 25th anniversary of this game's release, I'm going to try one more time to play through the game 100% and see if my mind can be changed. Because, again, I want to like it, but I've already played through this game 4 times in a row. If I try to play through this a 5th time, like, I don't, like... How many times am I supposed to enjoy it after a certain amount? You know? Like... Oh, but then, like, you played it several times. Like, then you clearly enjoy it. No. It's like I'm forcing myself to try to like this. So... And again, like I said, I actually think that, like, a lot of Half-Life mods are ironically better than Half-Life. So... Yeah, that being said, though, I don't hate this game anymore. I just think it's hella overrated. I'm going to put this in a C tier for now. But I'd rather play the Marathon, for sure. I'd rather play it than Hexen 2. But it's overrated. Like, 99s, like 95 to 98% on every single, like, website I've seen with this game. This is not one of the best games of all time. I'm just gonna be straight up about that. Even for the time, there were better games, like Unreal, but I don't want to get into that. Point is that, like, I tried, and I will try one more time. But if I don't enjoy it, then I don't enjoy it. Thankfully, we have the Black Mesa remake, and I actually do thoroughly enjoy playing through that. So, at least I have that. But, man, this was just not it for me. Oh god, great. First I got Bungie fanboys, now I got more Half-Life fanboys to go after me. Jesus Christ. Okay, but anyways, let's continue this. Speaking of Valve, Team Fortress Classic. This does count. Fast movement and weapons galore. I like Team Fortress Classic. I know it originally stemmed as a mod for Quake. For the love of me, I can't set up the mod. But I've played this version of Team Fortress, and I thought it was alright. I'll put it in a B tier. This came out in the year of our Lord, along with Quake III and Unreal Tournament. But I do think it came out earlier that year. But I do feel like that it's weaker. So that's just me personally, though. But let's get into the games that we've not talked about from the 90s. So, Rise of the Triad. What the hell is this game? Okay, to be fair, I've not played either of these games. Actually, I have not really played any of these games, if I'm just going to be frank. I put these on specifically for those who want to do the tiering of this. So if you guys want to rank the Rise of the Triad games, Power Slave, Strife, or World War II GI, go ahead. So, again, this list will be in the Discord. So, actually, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to straight up just put down all the games that I've not played yet in this tiering. So, yeah, just so that I'm, doing a fair assessment. So, yeah. There we go. Yeah, that's a pretty big list. So yeah, I've not played Turok Rage Wars, BPM, Cultic, Dread Templar, Daikatana, though, you know, that game's pretty infamous anyways, so yeah. Hellbound, Proteus, Turbo Overkill, Ultra Kill, Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun, and Ziggurat 2. I've not played any of those, so do keep that in mind. I have played the Turok games. Okay, the first two anyways. I didn't include 3 onwards because 3, again, I don't know if it counts. And Evolution and the 2008 game clearly don't count. So we've really got the first 2 games and then this first spin-off game to go off of. Turok. Gameplay-wise, at least on PC, because there's actually PC ports of both of these games on. They're actually going to release the third one at some point. I think either later this year or at some point next year, which is really cool. But these were originally on the N64. So, I mean, and that is pretty noticeable, at least on with the first game. And I feel like the first game is just a bit too generic in a lot of ways. It's a very, 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 very. It's essentially it's essentially a Quake clone. It's very noticeable, especially once you get your first gun in the game. It plays nearly identical to Quake. So, which isn't a bad thing, because I really do like Quake. And truth be told, I kind of like this sort of weird sort of environment. Though I definitely don't like the way that Turok looks in the first game, because he kind of looks too stereotypical Native American. They changed it with Turok 2, thankfully. He still has a very noticeable Native American look, but he actually looks pretty badass in Turok 2. It's pronounced Turok. But yeah, I would say that Turok 1 is a C tier, but then Turok 2 is a B tier. I think he controls way better in Turok 2 than he does in 1. And yeah, there's not, like, they both have they do have quite a bit of platforming, which again does kind of ruin it a little bit for me, but thankfully not as much in Turok 2, at least from what I've played. Maybe there's a little bit more, maybe this will age poorly, but like, yeah, Turok 2 at least is fine. I would not be mad if I were to ever play that ever. Maybe even ever again. Maybe even on stream at one point. And then nudge nudge. Alright. Now let's get obscure. Chasm, the Rift. So, I remember I tried playing this a couple of times. And the second time that I tried doing it, I tried playing the demo that's on Steam. And the second time I tried playing it on Steam, it literally did not have any audio. Like, the audio was just straight up gone. Yeah,
You blew it.
I don't know what they were thinking. That needs to be fixed. And no, it wasn't my audio. I actually checked. I checked whether or not I muted the game. I made sure that like the game itself had audio going through. I even checked on OBS to see if there was audio going through there, and there wasn't anything going through. It just did not have any audio. Not like that really matters anyways, because this game was kind of boring. Like, generic looking enemies and just sort of a weapon roster that like wasn't really fun to play with anyways. So I mean, yeah, and because of those technical issues, I'm probably gonna put this in D tier. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't able to go far on that one too, so yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. We reached the 21st century, but of course, we've got to talk about 2 other series. We've got TimeSplitters and then Serious Sam. So, TimeSplitters, I'm actually counting because the first 2 games, for the most part, do feel reminiscent of Quake. I've even mentioned that whenever I played through both of them on my streams for both these games. TimeSplitters 1 is a game that is not particularly bad, but I wouldn't say that it was particularly memorable. And it doesn't help that it's less of a single player story game and more or less just a challenge game so that you can unlock content for the multiplayer. And truth be told, yeah, TimeSplitters 1. And now thinking about it, yeah, this game's not very good either. I'm going to put this in, I guess, a high D tier. Especially when you compare it to everything else on the list. Like, yeah, I would rather play pretty much most anything else than TimeSplitters 1. Again, it's more of a challenge game, and the fact that you have to beat the game in all difficulties just for you to be able to have everything in the game, like, I'm fine with having challenges in games. Like, I've been pretty vocal about that. Like, I would rather be able to unlock stuff in game rather than do it like through rather than like having to pay like thousands of dollars potentially through loot boxes or ridiculous prices for like weapon skins and bullshit like that. That being said though, having everything locked behind difficulty levels is pretty dumb. So, yeah, that was... And it doesn't help that this is literally one of the shortest games I've ever played. I beat the game in literally like 1 hour, my first time, whenever I played it. I am not joking when I say that. Like...
What a shame.
Yeah. So, this game isn't very good. Thankfully, though, TimeSplitters 2 is the better game. It does have some similar problems where, like, there are some difficulty spikes. The first TimeSplitters game has some bullshit in it. TimeSplitters 2, unfortunately, has some of those same issues. Especially, like, in certain, parts of the game that involve explosives. I will not name them. But yeah, TimeSplitters 2 is the better game. Like, I appreciate it. It's a B tier. So, if you want a decent console shooter that isn't Halo, but is a more, it's more in line with like a retro shooter, then not a bad option. So, yeah. Future Perfect's not on here because that feels more like a contemporary shooter. So, yeah. And now we're getting into the Serious Sam games. So, Serious Sam, The First Encounter. This came out in 2001. And yeah, from what I can tell, Serious Sam was kind of the last sort of original wave. Like, it was the last of the original wave of these types of shooters. Like, it was sort of the last sort of like series of that era of gaming. And of course, Serious Sam being, you know, the gimmick for this one is that, like, it's like, yes, they are retro shooters, but the gimmick with this is that it's wide open battlefield maps where you just take out a ton of enemies. That concept was done exponentially with the first and second encounters. Normally I would just kind of separate these two, and truth be told, second encounter just feels more like an standalone expansion. But they are classified as two separate games, so that's why they're separate here. Regardless, though, I'm putting both of them in A tier. They are pretty fun. And yeah, the game has a protagonist that is a parody of Duke Nukem. Yep, Sam. And you can tell that they had a lot of fun with the lines in this game. And the level design, I mean, I guess you can't really call it levels, just more like just areas. They are pretty fun to deal with. And thankfully, the enemies themselves, they offer a challenge, but a fair challenge, to where it's like, if you make sure, like, it's basically like more, you gotta pay attention. So, which I know some people I know don't like that, but it's more fair in both these games, I feel like. So, yeah, I would recommend you guys check out these two games. Serious Sam 2, though, is a fucking weird game. I don't know what drugs they were on when they made this one. But, well, yeah. I mean, I've played these other games. I do think that they are inferior to the first game. Yeah, it's kind of one of those where it's like yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those series where it's like they peaked with their first game sort of thing. Not to say that these were bad, but like, yeah, these were just kind of iffy. And it didn't help that Serious Sam 4 launched broken when it came out. So, and that Serious Sam 3 was exclusively, okay, well, to be fair, First Encounter is exclusively in Egypt as well. But like, unlike that game, Serious Sam 3's areas just kind of felt the same. So yeah, like that's a problem. And yeah, like I said, these aren't bad games. It's just, it's one of those things where it's like they weren't able to strike lightning in a ball twice. So that's unfortunate. So yeah, if you want to play any of these games, just play the first one. And if you're curious, you can check out the other ones, but they're not required. Though, to be fair, I'd rather play these than most of the other ones, most of the other games on the list, so, or on that tiering. Alright, so last game of this era, Soldier of Fortune. Again, it counts. It has fast movement and has unlimited weapons. And well, it's on the Quake II engine. There's not really a supernatural element with this. It's pretty much more straightforward. This game was most known for how fucking violent this game was. And yeah, even now, it's like, wow, that's pretty rough to see. They slowed down the pacing of Soldier of Fortune 2, and Soldier of Fortune Payback just kind of feels more like a contemporary shooter. So that's why this is the only game that's going to be on here. It's fun, B tier. You know, I like the level design. That's about it, though. Like, it's a game that is mostly stands out because of its shock value, to be fair. And truth be told, what eventually, like, it basically walked so that eventually the Modern Warfare Call of Duty games could run, essentially. Though it does play more like a contemporary, no, it's not contemporary. It plays more like an old school shooter. So yeah, you'll be like running around and shit. So that's fun. And yeah, I would recommend if you guys are interested in a game that has a more grounded setting but does play like these types of games. It's the closest thing to like a military shooter that plays like this. That's good from what I've heard. Like, may I add? So yeah, there's that. And now we've got the modern games. So let's go over games that I've talked about before. Ziggurat. I'm still just gonna say this. It's a D tier game. It was super fucking boring, and well, no, it was super boring until you get to the final boss, who fucking kills you almost instantly to where you have to replay the entire game all over again. I know it's a roguelike, but again, I hate roguelikes. So this did not change my mind in that regard. And the enemies are really fucking weird for this game. Like, really? Demonic carrots? Really? I'm sorry, but like that's still really dumb to me. And yeah, it just doesn't help that like this game is procedurally generated. So like every area just looks the fucking same. Granted, I don't know what they did with Ziggurat 2. Maybe that's a better game, but after my experience with this one, I don't think I want to continue. So yeah, I'm sorry about that one, Chief, but I don't think I particularly care about going through on that one. So yeah. All right, last game out of familiar territory, at least somewhat. Dusk. I talked about it in our initial tier list here, but I haven't talked about it in a while. I've grown on this game as well. I think this game is pretty fun. High B tier, maybe A tier. I just haven't played the campaign. I'm more so just kind of, well, okay, I have played like the first chapter of the game, and I played the Horde mode. And yeah, it's pretty fun. I think I gave this game a little bit too much slack because, you know, this game basically plays near identical to Quake, which is the point because, you know, this is supposed to be an homage to all of the games that we just talked about, essentially. So it essentially was an homage to these old school shooters, which is why the term throwback shooter has been thrown around. And yeah, it's actually pretty fun, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. And it has a very similar theming to Blood, to where it's definitely in the horror department. And has like a bunch of occult stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's not a game that tries to reinvent the wheel, but I think I've come to learn that that's not a bad thing. You just got to do it really well. And thankfully, this game does its concept pretty well. Pretty good. So I think it is deserving of a B tier. Yeah, now let's finally get into... Oh, I haven't played either of these. Yeah, Metal Hellsinger. And then Ion Fury. I've not played either of these. I really want to play Ion Fury, though. That game looks cool as hell. So. And then we've got these games. Shrine. Let's start off with Shrine. This game is... It actually is another game that runs on the Doom's engine, funny enough. And it was released for free, so you can play this if you want. I don't... Oh, shoot, I forgot. Damn it, I forgot about the sequel. Yeah, it has a sequel. But if I'm going to be honest, this one's just a bit too generic in a lot of ways. I don't know. It's just... I mean, it's a game released for free, so you're not really wasting anything other than maybe your time on this. But if you want a game that plays pretty much just like Doom, since it's on the Doom engine, well, it's on GZ Doom, but essentially the same thing. It's a fun distraction, but I wouldn't say it's anything particularly memorable. The thing that does make it stand out is the H.R. Geiger sort of inspired look of the game, which does kind of give it at least a little bit of a unique identity, but like other than that, I wouldn't say it's anything that's like a must play. So, not a bad game, just not really something that's like a footnote in history, if that makes sense. And then we get a Medieval. Essentially a sort of a callback to Hexen and Heretic. I've actually played this for the first time literally just a few days ago. And I really like this game. As a matter of fact, I think it's better than Dusk. Hot take. Mostly because I like the theming more, since this is a more fantasy-based game rather than the horror theme of Dusk. Not to say that Dusk isn't, cool in that regard. It's just, for me personally, I just like the theming of a Medieval more. And yeah, it's fun. Like, I would recommend it to people, especially for those who do like Heretic and the Hexen games. Or want something a bit more on the dark fantasy/fantasy vibe. Or side, excuse me, God. So yeah, like, I think it's pretty cool. Some of the animations can be a bit weird, and even some of the enemies, but it's fine. So I think it's pretty cool. That leads us to our final game on the list, Hrot. And, well, I mean, the game, I like to call this, this game's from Czechoslovakia, so it's not, I know some people call it, oh, it's like Slavic Quake. It's not really Slavic. It's definitely a similar vibe. Like, it has a very similar art style to something like the Stalker games. Where it's that sort of, Central Eastern European, post-Soviet, sort of post-apocalyptic sort of look. And truth be told, this game is another one that I feel like not a lot of people have been talking about. But if I'm gonna be honest, I actually really like. It has some weird, and I mean weird, things about this game. Like, there's some weird enemies in this. Like, there's like a giant Lenin statue head that floats around that's similar to the it's similar to some like other Quake enemies. There's like a horse with a gas mask on it. There's like a moving wheelchair. There's some weird stuff that's in this game. Though it's tied to the culture of that region, so it makes sense in that context. And in a weird twist of fate, I would recommend this game. I think it's an A tier. Like, the shooting is pretty good. The level design, I think, is... It's a bit more on the simple side, but as someone who gets really lost in a lot of these types of games, that's fine with me. I guess the one complaint that I can see a lot of people saying is that it's a very drab looking game. Like, it's literally nothing but the color brown. But I think I've mentioned this before. I don't mind that with a lot of games. Because again, I like a lot of games from the late 2000s, and like a lot of them are either fucking blue, gray, or brown, or green even in some cases. So like, I'm fine with like a more mono based color scheme. Like, it's not something that I've ever had an issue with. And I like this sort of Eastern European, like Central Eastern European post-apocalyptic look anyways. It's something that like I really like with the Stalker games, and I want to see more of in like other media. So give me more of it. Like, I think it's a really cool look. So, but yeah, regardless though, that is my retro / throwback FPS tier list. Yeah, we got through that one pretty fast. Though, to be fair, there's really not a lot for me to say about a lot of these since I've already talked about them in this list. So, but of course, before we end this, I'm just going to make a quick addendum of this entire list. So, yeah, I'm going to be swapping things from, like, you know, the tiering, and of course all the games that are on here that are also on here, I'm just going to swap. So, yeah, you go down to B, you go down to B. Yeah, you're staying. But Wolfenstein: The New Order is going into S tier. I'll talk about that at another point. So, yeah, you're going down to C tier, B. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. You're going up to A. Going up to A. Going up to A. You're going down to D tier. Funny enough, Counter-Strike, I've actually grown on. I'm putting this in B tier. I've grown on the original Counter-Strike. Yeah, I used to not particularly care for that game as much. So, yeah. Prey 2017, going up to B tier. It's also going up to B tier. It's going up to C tier. And that's going to B tier. And that's about it for now. Okay, you're going down to B tier. I think that's a better... Yeah, Red Faction. Oh, and then you're going down to A tier. Yes, I think I feel more comfortable now. Oh wait, no, you're going down to C tier. What am I doing? Okay. Huh. Yeah, that's my addendum for this. Not too many changes, just moving the games to where they overall over on here. And as for the other changes, I'm putting Wolfenstein New Order in S tier. Funny enough, I may or may not be going into exactly why that is on my video I'm working on. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, Call of Duty 4, I don't need to explain why. I think it's fun, just I think I like World of War BO1 and BO2 better. And then Halo 2, I really like its campaign. It's not as good as the other Halo games in my opinion though, or at least the other Bungie era Halo games. So yeah. Okay, Delta Force, I think you're going down to C tier. And yeah, Blood I don't think is. Oh yeah, Duke. Yeah, I already said Duke Nukem is better than Blood. And then Unreal Tournament. That's yeah, I explained that. Counter Strike. Yeah, I've grown on OG Counter Strike. Though to be fair, I've been playing a lot with bots because I've actually was able to find a way to add bots into the game, and it's actually pretty fun playing with them. So that's nice. And yeah, I just had a lot of fun moments with those. Prey 2017. I need to play it a little bit more, but I do like it. I think it's pretty cool. Red Faction, I think I gave a little bit too much credit towards. The Geomod is still really cool in that game. The destructible environments. And I like the setup for the story in the game. I just think the story is so piss poor weak, and that kind of ruins it for me. Also, rest in peace, Volition. You're not gonna be a thing anymore. Yeah, I already explained. Shadow Warrior, Half-Life, Marathon. Delta Force is just a game that's kind of aged poorly. So it's just kind of average. Funny enough, there is a new Delta Force game that is in the works right now. It's a Battlefield style of game. I'm curious. Hopefully it actually, sets a fire under them. So, yeah. But yeah, that's my updated lists on FPS games, as well as the throwback games list. So, I was able to get another tier list done, and I'm excited about that. So, and again, if you guys want to check this out, this will be in the Discord that is down in the description. So, yeah, but either way, that's going to be it for tonight. I got to finish all my packing, so yeah, I'm really excited for TwitchCon. But either way, I hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to hit that follow button down below and turn on that bell icon so that you'll be notified exactly when I'll be streaming. While you guys are at it, make sure to check out the links down below. I already said Discord as well as SoundCloud, and all that fun stuff. Again, if you guys want to see, if you want to see other types of tier lists, feel free to recommend them to me down below as well. DM me, all that fun stuff. And if you guys haven't already, you can also hit the subscribe button. If you haven't, that's completely fine. I'm just glad that you guys took time to watch this. But regardless of all that, though, make sure to share the stream to other people as well, and continue to be awesome people. But until then, I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Again, yeah, I'll see you guys then. Sorry, I'm just out of brain. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really excited. Sorry, it's been a long couple of weeks, if I'm going to be honest. And it's going to be a weekend for sure. I'm excited, but yeah, I'm just kind of winded a little bit. But yeah, and if you guys are going to be at TwitchCon as well, you can definitely, see if you can check up with me as well. I know I'm for sure going to be, seeing some other people there. I'm really excited. And yeah, but until then, I'll see you guys on Tuesday live. So have a good night, and I'll see you guys later. Bye. There we go. Bye.